When we look at these by-elections, if they are just a mirror of what will happen in 2027, we are in danger.
I've seen on the IEBC website that 181 candidates were cleared to run for these by-elections. And out of the 181, we only had 2 women.
As is, if people are not even voting accordingly for these by-elections, I mean, it's an example of what is going to happen.
Yeah.
Everything is possible. I mean, New York has a new mayor. He's young. He has Ugandan blood, Mamdani. I mean, he's our brother. Hi, cousin.
The most important thing, just don't be an inactive citizen. Yeah.
True.
Remember, Africa is such a young continent. Median age of 17 to 19. But we are electing presidents that are above 80 and 90. 90.
Okay.
I think young people need to run for office. I think we need more young people in parliament. We need more young people in parliament, especially members of county assembly, especially members of parliament. You know, we need more young people in the executive. And we know that one of the ways, the pathways for you to get to top seats like the executive is to serve in parliament. So we can't divorce these things. We can't divorce ourselves from politics.
The Seed and Plant Varieties Act of 2012 did not allow for farmers to share seeds. It would be illegal for me to tell Stella, give me the seeds of your mango seedlings and whatever so that I go and plant. But then what has happened and what has changed is that a few days ago anyway, in November, there was a landmark ruling by a Kenyan court that declared some sections of it unconstitutional. And that really has restored the rights of small-scale farmers. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Journey and Fields podcast. My name is Mwende.
And my name is Stella, and on today's episode, we have a lot to cover, but we'll just cover all we can. From the politics of G20 to conversations about the recent by-elections in November of 2025, to also looking at what's been happening in terms of conservation and environmental matters, and every other thing that's in between there. So welcome, and I hope that you've got your tea, your drink, your water ready for this conversation. So I think let's start with what's been happening here at home. And I'll start with what's on my mind, which is the by-elections. Of course, we talk a lot about women's participation in this space.
Yeah.
The first thing that comes to mind for me is the question I have is, what should we link with what's happening now and what's to come in 2027? Because we can't say that these two things are isolated. You know, we saw lots of violence, bribery, and the most important thing for me is the participation of women in elections, in politics. I've seen on the IEBC website that 181 candidates were cleared to run for these by-elections. And out of the 181, we only had 2 women.
Oh, wow.
And in the top parties, none of them fielded a woman candidate, which is, again, very telling of how much women are still in the periphery of decision-making, still sidelined, quite sidelined when it comes to political issues. And it's not that women are not participating in politics. I mean, we saw them campaigning, we saw them doing interviews, you know, I'm sure they were part of the strategies. So is it a matter of the political parties not seeing the value that women have in political processes? Is it that women themselves do not see themselves as key players in political processes? Is it the level of violence that we've seen that also discourages women from taking part in politics? Bottom line, the challenge here is that we must start to ask ourselves questions about participation now, because I mean it's just 2 years away, actually less than 2 years away from the next elections, and I know we'll come back to the politics of the region in the continent, and again more scrutiny on women and their participation in politics. But yeah, I'm very concerned about what has happened. And even with all that, the theatrics that we are treated to, or the theatrics that we entertain, just looking at the politics of the conversations and the jokes about the Mbere by election, for instance, we seem to forget very fast about how even the manosphere of politics, it's now joking around the deputy president, joking around the former deputy president and their candidates, Wamodende and Karis. And now we seem to forget that some of them have been implicated with corruption cases. We are not asking ourselves, where are young people? Where are women? What is the history of these candidates that have been fielded by these political parties, and what should they tell us? Instead, we are, just having very non-objective conversations about the future of this country. What do the young people want? What did the young people of the different constituencies and wards want? So what do you think?
I mean, first of all, there's so many issues that you've brought up. There's an issue of even participation by voters. We've talked about women being involved. We've talked about just the way politics, the way it is still handled and the way we think about politics. And this is even more a societal issue rather than an issue of the politicians that we currently have, because where have they come from? They've come from the society. They've been supported by the society, probably to get there, either by our actions or lack of actions thereof. And when I think about, what you were saying, that we have about 2 years, it's actually less than 2 years, because 2 years from now, we will be having a new president at this exact time. So working backwards, next year, by now, campaigns will have started in some ways. So we have very little time. And I'm hoping that there's a lot of young people who are vying in 2027, because I feel like we need fresh blood. I mean,
Absolutely.
Even looking at what happened, one of the things that has happened, by the way, since we last filmed, is that Raila Odinga passed away. And I think even that brings a very different dynamic, because I feel like we all depended on, we knew Raila will represent us and will, push the limits, someone who saw himself in and all that.
And he was even the face of electoral petitions.
Yeah,
If there was a problem with elections, we knew.
We have Baba. Now we don't have Baba, guys. So the pressure is getting worse, and we just need to be more and more alert. So there's a lot that we are looking at and trying to watch ahead of 2027, because what we have known to be our opposition, now we will see the gaps with the opposition.
Yeah.
If Raila is the one who was holding that opposition down, now we will see what is happening. And there's already party wrangles that are happening. So, and this is like, in a year by now, we'll already know who's vying in some ways. So very little time.
Yeah.
And when we look at this by-elections, if they are just a mirror of what will happen in 2027, we are in danger. There's a video, I remember, earlier in the year, there was a video on TikTok, where there was a girl who was saying, if you don't lock in, my friend, and let me tell you as Kenyans, if we do not lock in, we are in danger. We are in danger. Right now, we should already try and see your current leader, what have they achieved for you? You should be assessing. You should not, forget about that. You should ask yourself, would I want this person to represent me again? Ask yourself, who are the people who've expressed interest in representing you at different levels, whether it's at the national level or with different roles, from president all the way down, or from, MCA all the way up. Are you already looking at what is happening? Because as is, if people are not even voting accordingly for these by-elections, I mean, it's an example of what is going to happen.
Yeah.
We were having this conversation before, and even the voter turnout is so low. And I don't know whether people are waiting for the last minute. I really don't know, because that last minute, when you have to go and register, your ID will get lost. And you know how much time it takes to get a new ID. So when we look at politics, I kind of feel like, as Kenyans, our mentality should be, do not rest. Just, it's not that, now we've voted in a new president, a new MP, a new governor. Okay, let's see what they'll do. And then you wait till the next cycle of elections to follow up on what's happening. Your role as a citizen is not something, it's like your job. I mean, when you're hired somewhere and you're paid to do it, you will show up regardless, whether you've had a bad day, whether you have a cold, whether you're sick, whether you're going through a breakup, you will show up. And that's how we should treat our role as citizens. Because then that ignorance is the one that's making, for example, women that are in politics continue to be ridiculed. But that to me, it's a wider conversation, unfortunately, because even in the workspace, women get ridiculed a lot, Even socially, even sometimes the way kids socialize themselves, you'll find them saying, we still have the mentality of girls should be secretaries, men are the leaders, the CEOs, and so on and so forth. And anyway, the truth of the matter is that some of these things, it's not like it's a click of a button that now the world will see that women are capable. Now, whatever things we've been socialized or, have grown up knowing culture-wise that, no, those things are, it's possible for women not to do them. I think it's a journey because at any given point, there's those ones who are woke, there's those ones who have the information, there's those ones who do not. And in some ways, sometimes you cannot fault the people who don't have information. Luckily, if you're an adult here, and you're watching this podcast, that means you have access to Google, you have access to ChatGPT and all other AI platforms that you can literally just go put in and say, tell me more about the two-third gender rule and what's happening in Kenya. So I think it's such a wider conversation of so many things that we need to keep in mind. But looking at these by-elections in terms of how we've shown up, in terms of all the effects of these by-elections, violence is still happening. This is a by-election. This is not even, probably the people in Kenya who don't even know that there are by-elections that were happening. So imagine all these things magnified at a national election level. And then dealing with the dynamics, as we've said, opposition right now, we don't know what's happening. We are watching. And then we are looking at the two-third gender rule. We are trying to think of our economy, protests, all those things. So we just need to stay a bit more alert and not be ignorant.
And we know we went to the streets in 2024 and even 2025, but that's not enough. We now need to go take over institutions. We can't work in isolation. We know that systems, most of them are not working. But the next question is, what can we do to change these systems? We can't change the systems from outside. We need our own allies. We need people who are progressive in institutions to also go to parliament, go to the judiciary, join the executive, push for influential push for influence or positions that actually give you influence to make decisions and represent others. And so it's very concerning to see that a lot of Gen Zs actually did not show up, first of all, to register as voters. And even in the by-elections, a lot of them did not come out to vote. And so one wonders, to what point do we continue to advocate for young people showing up? Protests are great. And you will find us on the streets in solidarity and asking for better and holding duty bearers to account. However, the next step is in engaging meaningfully. And that means being curious about what's happening. It means understanding the candidate that is vying to represent you. Because like it or not, the quality of member of county assembly, MCA, that you elect or fail to elect, the quality of your member of parliament, the quality of your senator, the quality of your governor and president and other leaders really is directly going to influence how things work for you. It's going to influence how your cousins and your friends actually access education and healthcare. And that's something we cannot continue to say. So time to pause and ask ourselves, are we really moving forward? Are we just resigning to protest and not asking ourselves harder questions about how we need to participate? The truth is we are not doing enough and we need to step up, I think we've given a bit of way forward on that, What else is on your mind in terms of what's happening in there?
Actually, before we move on from that conversation, I want to ask you a question, Stella. If God today whispered to you, Stella, I think you should go and vie for MP, would you vie for a political seat?
Absolutely.
Oh, really?
Absolutely,
Okay.
And when I was in uni, I wanted to be in politics. And in one way or another, even the work that I do, working in the feminist space is a very political process, But I do see myself considering politics later, And even now, I ask myself, what can I do? The truth is, in the last elections, I did campaign for a couple of people. People I campaigned for. There are people from Data Power Initiative that actually ran for office and won. And that to me is very important. So I am not resigning to being actively participative in what's happening. And even when I don't run for office, I'm not running for office in 2027, but I am that's why we have this podcast, for us to create awareness about what people can do, for us to also critique what's happening, and for us to also play our part as citizens, because having these conversations is part of our civic right and duty. Educating people in our families and in our communities about, your right to vote, how you can participate, your role in peace building in political processes is also a civic duty. So yes, I'm very much an advocate for progressives in politics. And I believe that people should not be resigned in terms of politics. Yeah, whether you like it or not, it's impacting your life.
Okay, good. I love that. The people of Murang'a.
Yourself? I'm not presenting myself as a candidate in 2027.
No. Honestly, this was just out of curiosity, because for me, I don't particularly envision that I would ever vie for a political seat. Me, I think not, unless, let's say, the people that I would ideally represent come and tell me whether it's you that we want. I don't know, but I would love to be able to be there behind the scenes.
Political
influence policy. I think I would work in like the ministries. Where the money is actually being decided where to go and all that. I would, maybe that. But vying, I don't know.
That's right now. That's the thing. You don't have to vie for office for you to be active in politics. You really don't have to. A good politician or a progressive politician needs brains to work on their manifesto. True. They need brains on their strategy. They need brains for their mobilization. They need brains in terms of informing what they will work on when they get to office. They need good brains in terms of analyzing what's going on. I mean, that's why we see a lot of politicians so out of touch. For real, like, that people need more support and more investment in access to education, but you're busy being seen distributing a bunch of Skuma Wiki and Kills, and I mean, you're completely out of touch. We have no idea who advises you, and that's why you need brains, And we've seen the most ridiculous things. We've had things about wheelbarrows, Other countries are busy strategizing about AI and how young people will consume AI in the most productive way. And here we are talking about Mount Kenya, as if Mount Kenya has produced the best innovative ideas for pandemics. I wrote that the other day. We need better. We need progressive ideas, and that's why the smart people, the ones who consider themselves so progressive and they think that they should not engage, we need them in those political processes.
True. That's true.
We need people like you.
So you know what? You don't have to vie, as Stella has mentioned. You can volunteer to support someone who you believe in. And if at all you have no time, you can give them your money, but only give money to people who you know will do progressive things. Because I think part of the reason, when you read some of these studies that have been done around young people's political participation, women's political participation, and the reason why we are not seeing them on the ballot, a challenge that has been addressed by people who've either tried to vie or who vied is the party politics, party nomination. And if you don't pass that part, you're not, unless you go in as an independent candidate, you're definitely not getting onto the ballot. And at the party nomination level, sometimes it is the money that you have that speaks. So I guess there's so many layers of challenges, because even, I think we've talked about this in another episode, how all of us should be active in political parties. You need to stand for something, because if you don't stand for something, well, too bad for you. Your life, you will have no one to blame. Even if you want to blame the politicians, but are you there where they're setting the agenda? Because if you go for an AGM for a political party, you should be able to say, no, I joined this party because I believed in XYZ. And now imagine if there's like 500, 1,000 people who are saying the same thing. So there's this Swahili saying, kidole kimoja hakivunji chawa. So let's all be the many vidoles in different contexts and play our part. And lastly, as I mentioned, do not be ignorant. It takes you 5 minutes or less to read something. Just keep staying informed. And everything is possible. I mean, New York has a new mayor. He's young. He has Ugandan blood, Mamdani. I mean, and who would have thought?
He's our brother.
He's our brother. Hi, cousin. I mean, so it's happening in other places, and it's very possible for young people to take up leadership. I think we just need to show up for each other, and we just need to show up for each other.
Right.
So moving on to something that I feel like is a bit more positive, we are going to talk about some seed law. Did you know that? And let me just find the act itself. The Seed and Plant Varieties Act of 2012 did not allow for farmers to share seeds it would be illegal for me to tell Stella, give me the seeds of your mango seedlings and whatever so that I go and plant. But then what has happened and what has changed is that actually this week, it was this a few days ago anyway, in November, there was a landmark ruling by a Kenyan court that declared some sections of it unconstitutional. And that really has restored the rights of small-scale farmers, because small-scale farmers were, for lack of a better word, suffering when it comes to the seed bit to it all, which was so unfair because, I mean, you know, we all grew up, for example, with our grandmothers telling you, kunywa mwarubaini. They knew all the plants. They knew all the remedies. Yeah. And what this act was doing is that it was controlling the breeding of such plants and generally the sharing of seeds, which doesn't make sense because imagine in the rural community, ushago, the way it's, I mean, we are water tunalima shamba, and it's very easy the way people who are sharing seeds so that they can all be able to, you know, grow good plants and so on and so forth. So just to highlight some of the things that ruling did, it invalidated sections. I'll highlight 2 or 3 that I'd put out. One, it invalidated the section that criminalized the saving or exchanging of unregistered or uncertified seeds. That had a penalty of up to 2 years in prison or a fine of 1 million. Imagine just someone who's a farmer at the community who's not even farming for commercial purposes, being fined because they have a seed bank. And you know how a lot of communities use seed banks to preserve their culture, preserve their food, preserve their history, and then also just based on the cycle of the weather. I mean, you know, if it's raining right now, you preserve your seeds so that when it's time to plant, they're in good condition. But there were regulations around how they could do that. And the government was heavily involved in you know, the seed banking process. Then the other thing that this section, or rather the court did, is that it also invalidated the powers that the government had to sweep powers or raid community seed banks and seize their seeds, because now that is what was happening. And lastly, the other one that I think I would love to highlight is that there were exclusive rights that were given to commercial breeders that local farmers or small-scale farmers did not have. And I feel like this is quite a big win because when it comes to, again, as I mentioned, preserving our traditions, our history, the kind of foods that we have, because that's how things happen. When the government starts controlling everything, this is when you find maize seedlings or maize seeds change. Now they're not as organic as they were because you don't know the conditions that they've been kept in. When things are more commercialized, it's now, you know, it's thinking about more so production for export, for sale, for money, rather than health purposes or, you know, maintaining what is best for the community and what is healthy. Yeah. So, I mean, I read that and I thought that was very, very interesting. And I think, Stella, because, I mean, me and you have worked in the same space. This, when I read this, it really stood out to me because I recall doing a training somewhere in Isiolo where they were complaining about this.
Right.
And in my mind, I was just like, hiya, you can't just, and they were like, no, if you want to do your production, these seeds you have to get them, like, it's like, you have to make sure they're certified that you can use these seeds and seedlings, which, doesn't make sense.
And you know, the craziest thing is this conversation about there are seed accreditors, you know, and legitimizing the fact that there's a select few. Another reminder of how patriarchy works and how capitalism works. You know, the dominance of a select few, and mostly we know that they're not from Africa. And so it's people who actually have no ownership on these seeds because they're on our continent. I mean, it's part of our food sovereignty. But they want to be the ones in charge of selecting and telling us and certifying. They're actually called seed certifiers, certifying which seed is indigenous, which is not, which is viable, which is not. Completely out of order. And more, we need to decolonize our systems more. We need to challenge this whole process more. One of the things that we need to talk about on this seed sovereignty conversation is the role of solidarity and advocacy, the role of even resources. Because, you know, for that case to go to court and be defended by those who defend it, I've seen Katiba Institute was there. I've seen the Law Society of Kenya was there. I mean, those are experts and they're resourced in one way or another, whether through the people who've been championing for this or, you know, their own organizations. And so it really helps for everybody to understand that, first, you can't fight these things alone. This is a whole very powerful advocacy conversation, and it really helps for people to come together and unite and push together. I don't know that you follow Claire Nasiki, and we're going to share her snapshot here. She's been part of the team that's been working on this case for the longest, like since last year. And you can see even from her post, like she talks about how it's taken a lot of team effort to protect farmers, majority of whom actually do not have the resources to go to court. And so it's just another case study of how different actors can come together and talk about causes and protect each other, and especially protect the most vulnerable. We know that majority of farmers are actually women. These women are very productive, producing a lot of food for the continent, and most of the time they're left without food because they actually sell it for, so that they can make a living. So that's one conversation. The other conversation is the fact that if they're left alone, then that means they would not even prioritize going to court. They would not prioritize litigation. They don't even know how to go about it. And so to see different groups, I also saw Greenpeace Africa as well as part of the conversation. So this is a shout out to the different actors actually on the front lines of advocacy of some of these things, and to tell people that this is why we need to educate ourselves. Because when you don't educate yourself, then you're taken advantage of. And now more than ever, we have to protect our continent in every way. Our ideas, they're coming for our ideas, they're coming for our food, and these are powerful bodies. These are powerful multinational corporations whose key people you'll never see, like they are sort of invisible. Behind this whole power are very, very powerful people who are quote unquote untouchable, and so only advocacy, only solidarity can help. And so we have a long way to go. And I can tell you, this is not the last time that they're coming for this thing. This is not the last time we're talking about seed sovereignty or food sovereignty. And we now even have another conversation about seafood, for instance, or even the water bodies and what people are doing, including industrialized meat that we're being told to eat. And again, it touches on Africa's food sovereignty. So kudos to everybody that's been working on this seed sovereignty conversation. And we need to get ready, arm ourselves, because honestly, it's going to come back. It's going to come back, But cheers to solidarity, advocacy, educating ourselves about things, and especially these conversations about indigenous people, indigenous foods, indigenous trees. And the more we stay, the more they're going down, by the way. We now have very few counties in Kenya that have a lot of indigenous trees as opposed to what we had many years ago. And again, it's just part of this, certification, and that is mostly done by actors who have never lived in the continent. They have no idea about the continent, but they want to position themselves as experts of this thing.
True. And I think something else, just before we move on to the next thing, that I saw that has been happening. I mean, it's not necessarily related to seeds, but it's related to food in one way or the other, which was also a positive thing that I noticed in terms of people taking action together. There's a lady on X who started an initiative. And when I say an initiative, not an organization, she just decided that she wants to start testing the milk on the shelves. I don't know whether you've seen those tweets.
No, I just saw
she was crowdsourcing. She sent out like a till number and told Kenyans, please contribute. This week I'm testing Brookside milk. This week I'm testing, and she would share now the results in terms of whether they have toxins, what their toxicity level, whether they're okay. And she's been sharing this information. And I saw this week, she said that she'd received a cease and desist letter. And it was like, okay, I mean, this is just citizens trying to confirm that what we have on the shelves is actually, good for us to consume. But again, just going to show what citizen-led action looks like.
Disruptive.
It's disruptive. I mean, for you to receive a cease and desist, and there's nothing letter. There's nothing wrong. Umesumbua system, because God knows maybe what results will come up. So again, there's so much that we have the discretion to do. And what I will say is, I know that we are busy people, but best believe, again, however you can contribute. Sometimes it's creating awareness. Sometimes it's just reading through something. Sometimes it's signing an online petition. Sometimes it might need you to go to a public participation meeting. Sometimes it might need you to send money to contribute to a cause. Just keep thinking about it, keep looking through it. And what I will say is, at any given time, we need to be alert on 10 different things, because this whole, like now, if we are focused on like, okay, what's happening with ODM, and then now what's happening with, food sovereignty, and then what's happening with, whatever else, we might get lost because there's so much that's always happening,
yeah.
But then we need to pay attention. And sometimes, even if maybe something might not be what you're passionate about, take some time to learn. I'll tell you for a fact, the whole thing about the seeds, I learned from one of my workspaces when I went to do some trainings to different communities, and they were all like, yeah, this is one of the main things that's eating at our soul. And at that time, I don't think I'd ever taken interest in it. But then you see now, when I think about it and I reflect, when we talk about the quality of food that we eat, when I think about my health, I want to be able to go into a butchery, buy meat, and trust that whatever I'm buying has been well fed. I want to go buy, for example, milk, buy vegetables, and trust that, they're safe. And I mean, if I'm being very, very ignorant and not knowing that, by the way, there's this whole regulation around things like seeds, for example, that means I'm not necessarily being keen on the things that I want to see for myself.
Yeah, and this conversation about seed sovereignty is actually a story of hope. That's why we thought we should share it, that it's not everything that's going on that's going so bad.
Yeah.
There's hope, to be honest, and people are doing what they can. Guys are pushing. People are relentless in pushing for the change that they want to see. People are not just staying home and relaxing and asking themselves, now what happens? Let's wait for what we're saying about Raila. Let's wait for other people to fight for us. There are people who are actually out there and pushing for change. And we hope that this can be an encouragement so that we know you're busy. We are also busy, but we can't be too busy for our political governance in the country. You can be too busy not to remember how much you're taxed every month. If you're on payroll every month, you need to ask yourself, what is that pay doing for you? And because you pay tax, then you deserve good public service. You can't be too busy to understand that you pay for SHA, or somebody in your family pays for SHA, but somebody in the same family is not able to access SHA services. They have to still go back to their pocket and pay for it. We must remember we are paying for housing levy, and we are also building and planning to construct our own homes. What is that money doing? So to be curious about what's going on, even those things that are affecting you directly. You're paying for VAT. Do you know how much you pay for VAT? And what does that do? It helps to know, to understand. So don't just be too busy to not ask yourself some of these questions.
Yeah. And maybe just before we hand over to you, Stella, you mentioned something very important because for example, I know Kenya is planning to borrow from the IMF again. I was just reading through that sometime this week, and yet again, pay increases periodically. So you're being deducted more and more from your salary. And mind you, we are being told that the economy is improving. So then ideally the government should be able to make money from the economy itself if it's improving. Why do you need to tax people more? And it's just small things like that. So you have to complete the loop of knowing this information and knowing, when things are becoming a problem, or just understanding. Because what I've come to realize is that things can get worse and worse. That's the thing. Now we can't sit and say, but huku Kenya, no, those things don't happen. It's, for example, even small things like the way scientists and geologists, and they're trying to say that the Rift Valley is splitting. And they're saying that an effect of that is that, the way we see these hurricanes and earthquakes, like tragic ones that keep on happening, the earth tremors and all that. And we keep saying, that can't happen to us. But guys, Kenya is right within the Rift Valley. So then, if we are ignoring all of that, what's happening with Lake Naivasha? I mean, hotels that even Lake Baringo, hotels are being, for lack of a better word, swallowed by water. That was direct translation, but just a lot that we have to keep learning about, and just knowing that these things can actually happen to us. This is how, countries that are war-torn, it starts like this, slowly and slowly and slowly and slowly, not being alert, the wrong leaders getting in. Before you realize, there is a war. And then,
we can't afford to remain silent or inactive as citizens. Educate yourself, educate your family, educate your community. The most important thing, just don't be an inactive citizen.
True.
All right, on to matters, Mama Africa, and elections.
Mama Africa.
Mama Africa is such a young continent. median age of 17 to 19. But we are electing presidents that are above 80 and 90. 90.
Hey.
We have a 92-year-old president. And well, we thought that, women in leadership would actually be giving up. And don't get me wrong, they are actually changing things. The Namibia president, for instance, is doing a great job. And she's very progressive. And for that, we congratulate, first of all, Namibia for, also being open-minded and taking the chance to actually give a chance to a woman to lead. And she's doing exceptionally well.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that brings us back to the conversation about women in leadership, of course, what's happening in Tanzania. And I mean, that has also taken us back. There's now more scrutiny. It's actually not as if, we are moving 3 steps forward and then 4 steps back. And yeah, what's happening in Tanzania has now set us back again. And the question is, you guys were so happy when we got a woman in power, the first female president in Tanzania, but look at what's happening. So yeah, for me, it's a concern about why this whole gap and shift in the median age of Africa. We know we are a young continent, but look at what's happening in the top leadership of our countries. And then, we keep talking about gender and leadership, inclusivity, representation.
Yeah.
But so it's as if the more things change, the more they remain the same.
Yeah.
And now more than ever, we have to keep talking about these democratic conversations, democratic institutions. Where is the hope? And of course, I always get so concerned when I hear people say, democracy is not for us. Of course, I disagree with that, but there is a conversation there that needs to be had about the civic space in Africa. And we even have seen the East African community and how there's solidarity in terms of, authoritarianism and the fact that citizens can now not challenge what's happening in the space. We've even seen activists, Kina Bobby, who've been arrested in our neighboring countries. And the questions then that we've had is, what were you doing in our country? And even some Kenyans have questioned, what were you going to do? You should have stayed at home, which I mean, just is unacceptable. Why do we talk about solidarity if we cannot be there for each other? We held an X-Space for a working group that I'm part of, and a young woman, a young leader she's a civic engagement leader in Tanzania, and she was saying that they woke up to a shutdown, like they could do nothing. But when they got back, when internet was back, they were so encouraged to see the voices from Kenya. They were saying that young people from Zambia were talking, young people from Nigeria were talking, and actually the noise that was being made by other people outside of Tanzania is what actually saved them, And so there's a place for solidarity. There's a place for international actors in calling out violence and violent political processes. There's a place for us being in solidarity.
Yeah. Oh, the situation in Tanzania, that was very, very... I don't want to say shocking because I know that such things have happened, but I don't think that we would think that would happen, in this day and age. But that I would never forget, because that particular week I had gone for a conference somewhere, and unfortunately, even the people that I work with, Tanzanians, could not attend the conference. I mean, they were offline for 6 days, and this is total, even VPN was not helping at this point, completely offline. And in this day and age, we know what being offline means. And I mean, that's very dictator-like, for lack of a better word. And when we look at their president, of course, we were very excited to see a woman in leadership. Let me tell you, those are things that we will always celebrate, no matter who she is as an individual. Even the fact that she made it to leadership as a woman says a lot. Now the challenge is perhaps now questioning her leadership skills, her maybe what she believes in and all that, because when sometimes people keep talking about this whole thing about women in leaders and they're not doing the right thing, I kind of feel like because the world is looking at women more and more, and it's because we've been pushing for more women to get in leadership, so the world is now like, let's see, you've been saying, let's put women in leadership. Let's see what more unique thing that they will achieve. And I think that's why the scrutiny is so much more on her. And of course, this is in no way am I trying to sanitize anything that she's done. But I think that's the thing that I struggle with, because other leaders are corrupt. Other countries, the same thing is happening. However, because this is a woman, it becomes, let me tell you guys, when people say we need women in leadership or we need equity or gender equality in leadership, we are not saying that women are better than men, that women are better leaders. But what we are saying is they also deserve, I know. Yeah. But ideally, when we're talking about gender equality, the point is everybody deserves the opportunity, looking at it in terms of the opportunity. Yeah. So the thing that happens is there might be people who will come in and they're just not the right people for it. And it's the same way, even with men. How many of them do we know in leadership that are not the right leaders? In fact, they're even more than the women themselves, by virtue of them being more in numbers in leadership, but more male leaders are corrupt. More male leaders have, and part of the reason they're even more corrupt is because of the patriarchal system. Because you might even find women are in leadership, but they don't get the opportunity to even be in those meetings where people are discussing bad deals because they're locked out of rooms. But anyway, just when I think about this, what I feel is that we shouldn't try and discredit that, that women are not good leaders just because maybe there are some women leaders that are not doing good things. Yeah, because then that to me, those are the things that keep on setting us back. And those are the things that I feel bad about, because people are not able to separate. There's a conversation here about gender equity in leadership, and then there's a conversation here about good leaders. And these are two different conversations. If she was a man, do you think that there would be those kind of statements being made? Probably not.
And that's why the conversation is there. So I agree with you that, we can look at Namibia and give it as a very good example and a case study of what a woman in leadership can do. And then we have Tanzania, which is why my point is, when you're a woman in leadership, when you're a woman who's taken up space and the world celebrates, you need to know that scrutiny is, again, top notch. And what women leaders must always remember, even you and I, in the different spaces that we serve, we must always remember that our being in a space is a representation of what women can do. Yeah. We still have not gotten to a point where we've now proven that, women can do it and excel and succeed, and they can even have audacity. We still have not gotten to that place where you have the audacity to do whatever, and I'm for audacity, but we know that you will always be under strict scrutiny. And so when you take up space as a woman, and every woman leader should know across the world, and especially in Africa, that the world is looking at you, and whatever you do, good or bad, will be translated into something that you do not even want to imagine. And so you have to deliver. You have to respect people. You have to uphold human dignity, because when you do something that a man would have done 10 times worse, trust me, you will look like you did it 1,000 times worse.
Just because you're a woman.
Yeah. So we still haven't gotten to a place where now women and girls are free. And so we're relying on those in positions of power to prove that actually, yes, this is it. And until then, women in leadership have a lot to do. So tuko na kazi.
True.
Yeah.
True. But I like that you've highlighted that in some ways it's a responsibility. Yeah. And it's also because of the fact that most women getting into politics or leadership, let's say governance, political governance in Africa, they're making history. So people are looking at it, and because people already have the mindset of, some people, let's say, women can't be leaders. Their work is to be seen. Their work is not to be heard. Their work is to, and so on and so forth. Because some people still have that mindset. That's why the lens or the magnifying glass is really being used here to scrutinize. But again, I like the fact that you've reminded us that it's a responsibility. And what I do want to say is that for any leader, any gender, it is a responsibility. It is your job to go there and hold that position in high regard and do what you're supposed to be doing, because you're representing people. Otherwise, we need to get to that point where it's like, bye, go home, get out. We've full on not gotten there, but I can't wait for the day where it's like, what, even politicians, when they get in, they just know I better do a good job because, hey, watu huko kwetu ni wakali, neza tolewa within 2 years or something. Yeah.
And on the matter of the gap between, the fact that we are a very young continent and what we are seeing in terms of our leadership, I wrote an article a couple of weeks ago, and it was about that what can we do to translate what we are seeing in the Gen Z movement? And it's not just in Kenya. I mean, we saw it in Nepal, we saw it in Madagascar, we saw it in Bangladesh. We've even seen it now in Tanzania. Young people have already proven that, you know what, we have the skills to mobilize resources. We can organize ourselves. We can serve in places. We are accountable people. So maybe we need to ask ourselves, what can we do to harness these skills and put them in institutions? And what am I saying? And I know this is my own view and my own opinion. I think young people need to run for office. I think we need more young people in parliament. We need more young people in parliament, especially members of county assembly, especially members of parliament. You know, we need more young people in the executive. And we know that one of the ways, the pathways for you to get to top seats like the executive is to serve in parliament. So we can't divorce these things. We can't divorce ourselves from politics. That's my one call to young people, so that we stop saying that Cameroon has a president who is more
92.
than 90 years. You know, Malawi has a president who is so old, they can barely do anything. We've even heard of incumbents who cannot walk to campaign, and they're still getting back to office. But we have very many young people. So now more than ever, Africa's protests, the globe's protests that are led by young people, they need to translate this power into parliamentary power, and we need to see them in these institutions. We can't work in isolation. We need to also think about sending allies and representatives in these very deeply entrenched, powerful systems and institutions. Yeah.
Stella, I want to remind you that
please.
you're the young people here, but
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway, love that though. Yeah. But I think I just don't understand, like a 92-year-old president, like, whew, a 92-year-old president that has been president since 1993.
Imagine. That's the year I was born.
Same.
Yeah.
I mean, wow. Anyway. Yeah, we really, really need to think about things.
We do.
But the good thing is that because we are living in a world of information, I think we will get there. It will take some time, and we'll get there. And the good thing is that every generation has come with a different thing that they've brought forth in terms of changing how governance is done, particularly, let's say, in Kenya. Okay, well, in Kenya, maybe Kenya is very different because you know what? If we didn't have the people who are fighting for multipartyism, maybe right now we'd still be the ones who are being led by a president who's been a president for 33 years. Yeah. So I have a lot of hope in Kenya because we've seen how every decade or with every generation, we have never lacked a champion. Right. And now for us as young people, we need to support the champions that come out. We need to volunteer to be the champion, stand up, get up, stand up, whatever that song says.
Right.
Don't give up the fight. But yeah, we need to do that. And now is the time. In fact, we've started this session today, and then now is when I've really seen the reality that elections are like, to me elections are actually next year, like, because once campaigns start, that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is now the time. If you want to vie, this is now the time to make the decisions. Not think about it. This is the time to act, because you should have started thinking about it like 5 years ago. Now is the time to act. Yeah.
Now is the time to work. I feel like also people start thinking about campaigns too early.
No, it's not about campaigns. Like if you were to vie, I mean, okay, well, it would be nice if you've really thought about it, because we know the challenges. You know how before you even get through the party nomination, you need to strategize. Yeah. So that's what I meant. Yeah. But that's what I meant in terms of like, now is the time to act, because thinking about it should have been back then. But yeah, let's just start getting ready. And for the rest of us, let's put our money, our whatever resources, whether it's time, where our mouth is, and support as many young people. And even if it's not young people, let's support as many people that have the right agenda for us. Especially. And then let's support women to get in. You know what? We'll never know if something doesn't work, not unless we give it the opportunity. Yeah. And that's what I keep saying about the 2/3 gender rule. Up until we achieve that 2/3 gender rule, and then we have a few years of, having a parliament that at least is 1/3 women, if not more, and then we see whether it works, I will never believe I'll never believe the siasa of like, we've elected these women and they're not doing a good thing. Yeah. Because I feel like we've not even gotten to the threshold that we need to get to. Those ones that have gotten there already, they've tried so much. Like there's something they've conquered, there's something that they've done, there's something that they've achieved, because clearly it's not as easy. So while they may not be doing the right thing, I keep telling myself, you know what? We've had politicians who are not doing the right thing for so many years. Once we get to that 1/2 gender rule, achieving that, and then we've had it for like a few years in action, is when I will make up my mind and be like, but I doubt that I doubt that I would ever say that it's the women that are the problem, because they are not.
And let not one woman, please, be the reason why people say that women don't make good. Women make better leaders than men. And
True
facts,
that.
we can break that down in a full episode.
Maybe we should.
Yeah. All right.
That one we will be.
Do you have anything else that is making you think about the civic space at this point?
Yeah, no.
All
I mean, okay, I could keep going, but like, watch on your chair. Because me who said that I have a cold and a sore throat, sitaongea sana today, look at me yapping.
This conversation light you up. Yeah. All right, that's it for today. We would like to hear from you. What are your thoughts about the civic space? And by the way, shout out to people in the digital space who are actually doing a lot to have conversations about civic rights and civic participation. I've seen the next episode of Sauti Session is actually about the role of content creators in civic spaces and participation. I mean, and we know a couple of influencers who are doing it and who actually were part of the conversations and the organizing that we saw since last year. And so it's changing. And of course, politicians can also not ignore or avoid digital spaces. And so don't stop being active in the digital space. Just make sure that you're safe and you're also protecting yourself. Thank you so much for joining us. Please let us know, what are you thinking about in terms of what's happening in Kenya, across our beautiful Mama Africa, in the continent. What are you doing in your part to make a difference? What are you doing to educate those around you? What are you doing to educate yourself? Do you have a page where we can tell our community to look, to check out? Please let us know. Until next time, see you.